Hello and welcome to this message from Non-Woke Religion. I'm Stephen Eichler, PhD. Non-Woke Religion posts are intended to present practical religious viewpoints that have not been tainted by woke, far-left or progressive politics. Today's topic is Autism Rise, Possible Cause. Correlation demands investigation. Over recent decades, use of the MMR vaccine has declined and then returned in some countries. This has created an opportunity to measure changes and possible side effects and to start to imply a link. Nicholas Holscher, MPH, and Dr. Peter McCullough have reported on Substack that a correlation over decades has been observed between MMR vaccination rate and autism spectrum disorder, ASD, rate, with measurements based on birth year. Quote, this information came from a study entitled Childhood Vaccines Contain Trillions of Human Fetal DNA Fragments Capable of Genomic Integration. This peer-reviewed study found human DNA fragments in fetal cell-derived vaccines exceeding the US Federal Drug Administration limit by up to 2,760% and mapped their potential integration sites to genes associated with autism. End quote. This graph shows a population-level correlation between ASD prevalence and MMR coverage in UK and Scandinavian countries. Blue is autism prevalence and red is MMR coverage. The x-axis is time according to birth year. Note that the MMR axis does not start at 0. However, there may be other vaccines that have the same DNA problem. The study also presents data for the hepatitis A vaccine, which also has DNA contamination at a high level. The following is provided thanks to South Australian Senator Alex Antic. Quote, on 5th September 2025, US lawyer Aaron Suri testified to the US Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs with respect to the safety evaluation of the CDC's childhood vaccination schedule. A central finding in Suri's testimony was an unpublished retrospective study from Henry Ford Health conducted 2017 to 20, comparing health outcomes in 18,468 children born between 2000 and 2016. 1,957 unvaccinated versus 16,511 vaccinated. The results included a finding that vaccinated children had statistically significant higher rates of chronic conditions, including 3 times the rate of atopic diseases like eczema, 4.3 times the rate of asthma, 5.5 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders, and 5.9 times the rate of autoimmune disease. Overall, the authors of the study concluded that vaccinated children were 2.5 times more likely to develop a chronic health condition of some sort. End quote. I now note that proper testing of many vaccines has not been required, even though their use is often mandated by government agencies. This should never have been tolerated by the public or by political leaders, but medical bureaucrats preceding Bobby Kennedy have not cared about this glaring problem. There are also many standards of chemical purity that have not been observed either, in particular DNA contamination level. These problems have also gone largely unnoticed, though now there seems to be an effort to check these basic standards. The type of DNA contamination also matters, as some DNA impurities contain powerful gene promoters, which are likely to lead to cancer if integrated. These promoters are commonly used to synthesize proteins and peptides artificially in the making of vaccines. These billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies should not be allowed to cut corners and to not do the proper chemical cleanup when making products for injection into patients. They should also be required and monitored in reporting on compliance with regulations like the maximum for DNA contamination and related or similar rules. Now consider the meaning of correlation. If two parameters rise and fall together, they are said to be correlated. This does not prove that one of these causes the other, though a hint may occur if one rises consistently before the other. For example, an environmental temperature rise tends to precede a rise in CO2 and not vice versa. This still does not prove causation, though it does tend to disprove the vice versa argument. And this lack of proof is where information about vaccine contamination and tendency for the DNA fragments to integrate into the patient's cells at critical sites allows causation to be considered possible. That is, we now see a plausible mechanism. There is still a long way to go in proving causation. This leads to the issue of poor medical statistical record keeping and anonymized publication or lack thereof. Medical statistics are vitally needed to further analyze issues like this. An infamous example is the lack of recording of COVID vaccine status in many countries when unusual or unexpected illnesses occur or unexpected deaths occur. The use of these vaccines means that it is possible for children will be born normal and after being vaccinated with a vaccine contaminated at a high level with human fetal DNA, they develop mental health-related brain injuries. The medical community must do better to validate all of the vaccines and other treatments that are given to patients. Kennedy has set the ball rolling and all of the industry partners need to get on board. There needs to be no cancel culture politics as has occurred under Biden and earlier leaders when a medical officer reports a problem. Rather, the problem needs to be properly investigated rather than suppressed. The input of non-woke church and synagogue members on these matters is needed and would be appreciated. We need to warn our people that there has been a lack of proper testing of many vaccines, and we may now be starting to ask and find out what side effects and contamination there is. We must see the reality of this so that we can let our political leaders know that we do not want untested or unsafe medical treatments to remain unaddressed, and vitally, they should not be allowed to be mandated. That is all for today. See you again soon. Thank you, and may God bless you.